I'm Mychal. I'm a sommelier, tarot card reader, and ballet dancer.
I'm Suzanne, and I am a writer, an author, and a teacher.
And this is All the Woo, A for astrology. Actually, I'm going to clarify really quick. Former ballet dancer. No longer current. Anyway, this is All the Woo, and really want to point out that this is a safe space.
We want to be a space where you can come and you can hang out with us, sort of like the third person at our table. Not that there's room for a third person because we don't have a table, but other than that.
That's true. Theoretical table.
A theoretical table and a theoretical third person. and just be part of the conversations that we kind of already have about our lives and experiences that are woo adjacent and also just straight up woo.
Yeah, this is really supposed to be a non-judgmental space that we're sharing with you and just sharing our personal experiences and things that we've come to know, learn, and have in our own lives.
And if it's beneficial or at least entertaining, we hope you hang around. So today in our A to Z is A for astrology, which is, Mychal?
The study of movements and relative positions of celestial bodies interpreted as having an influence on human affairs and the natural world. And if that sounds like a dictionary definition, it's because it is. It is the Oxford Dictionary definition of astrology.
One of the things that we are doing here at All the Woo A to Z is wine pairings with our topics because, why not? If you were going to be locked in a closet with one of your best friends and you were going to talk astrology, wouldn't you want bubbles too?
Yeah, I would, for sure.
So, Mychal, what is this and why this?
Okay, so first I'm just going to say this is the first time I've ever paired wine with a subject before, so it's been fun, but astrology was the easiest one. So what we have in our glass is the Reventos Blanc de Blanc. It is a cava, and it's from Spain, so it has bubbles in it, similar to champagne. But why I chose this wine is because Reventos uses biodynamic farming, which is a level of organic farming that you can acquire within the wine world, and it's the highest level. Well, I was trying to give reasons why biodynamic for like what it is in concise format. So I used ChatGPT for this. I found two really interesting definitions that...
We're covering the spectrum here, people.
We are. We want to give you a holistic view, honestly, of these things. And so the definition that I'm going to go with that they gave was organic agriculture with a celestial twist, integrating lunar cycles and mystical preparations for holistic farming.
And the slightly more cynical point of view is a whimsical blend of mystical rituals, cosmic mumbo-jumbo, and a dash of snake oil, all wrapped in a pretentious package of farming practices. Because who needs science when you can just bury a cow horn full of manure under the full moon and call it agriculture?
True. Very true.
GPT goes both ways.
They go both ways. They can give you both sides of the fight there. But also why bubbles? Just because it's good. You should know this about me. This is really important. I just love bubbles. And why not is what I say. Okay, so astrology. Why?
And also, a topic that is as big as time and space.
It's going to be hard for us to boil this all down into just a 25-minute segment, but we're going to do our best for you all.
And really what we're going to do is focus on how it affects us and what we personally know, because a bunch of the other stuff you can get on 7,500 other websites.
True. So Suzanne, why do you use astrology in your life?
I find it really beneficial because it helps me narrow things down.
Okay.
So the energy of the day kind of giving me a focus, the energy of the month showing me what I'm, supposed to be kind of paying attention to. I think of it as surfing in that the weather is happening regardless. Actually, that's a terrible analogy because surfing doesn't involve weather.
I mean, sometimes it can, yes. If there's a storm.
But all of the things that are moving around you that you don't have control over, but if you know what they are, then you can understand how to move through them successfully.
True.
How about you?
Yeah, kind of the same. I kind of use it, like you're saying, like a weather report in trying to figure out how I can be prepared and best use what's going on so that I'm not trying to work against the flow of what's going on. I'm working with it. Like I think you've used this example before. If it's the weather report is telling you that it's supposed to rain outside that day, it's probably a good idea to come out prepared with either a raincoat or an umbrella or something like that so that you don't get wet. I kind of use astrology in the same way. So especially when I'm going through difficult times and I haven't been paying attention to what's going on astrologically, that's definitely the time that I'm like, what is going on right now? So that I can get a better idea of like, what's just me? It's like, is this me?
Bringing it to myself. No, and I actually have friends who will call me and be like, okay, Astro, like, what is going on? Why are things going crazy?
Oh, yeah, my mom does that. I've literally gotten calls where my mother is upset. She's like, what's going on right now? Because...
But I will say that is one of the interesting things about astrology right now.
True.
Is that, and we've gotten this from multiple astrologers, that for decades it's been kind of like, well, you can adjust this, or you might want to do that, but if you can't get it right now, it's okay.
Yeah.
Whereas now they're like, there's a conjunction that hasn't been seen in 25,000 years, or, not since 1776 or 1548 or whatever date. And because I love history and that is what I write about, I actually know some of those dates.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, whoa, men were wearing dresses. Like, it's a long time ago.
Men were wearing dresses.
Or tights and heels, it depends. But yeah, I think people are coming around to astrology because it's becoming a much bigger piece in people's lives.
True. And I think people are starting to now see all the different kinds of astrology that can be utilized. I mean, for what we're talking about here as far as worldly things that are happening, not to get super technical, but it's considered to be mundane astrology. You can actually just look at that kind of thing, using it for what's going on in the world.
And then there's the horoscopes that everybody reads on their, Chinese food menu and in the magazine.
And chances are, if you're not super aware of what astrology is all about, that's more likely than not how you've probably encountered it. Either that you read in a magazine, or back in the day when people read newspapers, what your horoscope in the newspaper was. And unfortunately, I think that it kind of gives astrology a bad rap, personally, because that's assuming that astrology is a one-size-fits-all kind of thing, and it so is not.
And that's, I think, one of the most beautiful things, at least to me, about it, is the absolute intimacy of it. So the reality that we are all born in a specific moment that is, part of space-time that will never be again. And so we are each unique. And we each have a unique path forward and and I'm using unique in the journalistic sense of only one, like there is only one. And so understanding that you are that significant in the universe and that everybody is.
Also that there's an element of free will that kind of comes into it as well. So you can have two people who are born on the same day, in the same place, at the same time, and they will not necessarily have the same life. And you're like, well, what about that? They don't have the same things happening to them. It's not, a copy of each other. And it's more just kind of like a slight pick your own adventure in some ways. Like, you're presented with an option, and you as a person get to decide what road you're going to take. And then that will then influence what then gets presented to you from that moment forward.
A really big decision tree.
Yes. And so that's why you find that even though people were born on the same day, there might be some similarities, but it's not going to be a mirror image of each other for sure.
No, and then all of the past components that go into that, they don't have the same parents, a bunch of other things. I mean, even twins don't have the same astrological charts.
True.
And actually, that's one of the more fascinating things. I think it's Elle magazine that has the Astro twins who do their readings. And so there's a source that is going to be much more accurate than other cookie cutter kind of astrology.
Yeah. Besides that, well, okay, I'm going to give you an example for myself in my life where it was kind of like, hey, it's kind of just giving a broad kind of heads up of what's going on, but it's my choice to decide what I'm going to do with that information. So a reading that I had from an astrologer who I've known and had in my life my entire life, I had some things that were showing that I might have some health concerns coming up, and potentially what those health concerns, what part of my body that might be in relation to. And astrology can get that detailed. And so he was telling me, he's like, hey, around this time, you might start to have some health issues or potentially something like that going on. I would say maybe just go and get checked up now, or make sure that you're paying attention to your health right now, because that's actually really the focus for you, is to pay attention to your health. So get ahead of it, and then you can mitigate anything that could potentially, by ignoring any kind of symptoms if you are ignoring something right now. And I did, and it was great. And it was true. Health has really been a focus for me in my life, not because things have been going wrong, but just in general. I've been trying to be my most healthy self.
And I would say if you are kind of on the fence of going, I'm not sure if this works for me, look back at your biography and just ask yourself, did my life dramatically change? Did I dramatically change between the ages of like 28 and 32?
Yeah, that's a big time.
I used to think that was just when women kind of came into their own, but in fact, it is a first Saturn return. So Saturn returns to the place that it was in your birth chart. And for me personally, that was fireworks in every part of my life.
I think I blew up my life at that point. And, I've hit the reset button for sure, but that was definitely a hard reset for me in my life.
And so just having that kind of information in advance just helps you to be prepared, and also to be like, oh, this isn't the end of my world. This is the rebirth of my world.
Yeah. And if I'm questioning what's going on in my life and how I've built my life so far, that it's actually probably pretty natural that I am asking those questions at this moment in time. And it doesn't mean that you need to blow up your life like I did at all.
Or I did. But I needed to, so. Yeah.
And so did I. Yeah, definitely so did I. But, just to know that, okay, it's not unusual for me to be asking these questions.
I guess the way I feel about it is, so many of us are like, oh, God, what am I supposed to do with my life? And where am I? And how does this work? And whatever. And God is like, I built you a clock. It's in the sky.
Use it.
Just read it. Just read it. It has a timer on it, too. So.
Yes.
So that part of A to Z was a little bit wide.
Yeah.
How about in the nano, Mychal? Like, what do you do daily that allows astrology to have an effect or a beneficial effect on your life?
So I keep an abnormally close eye on my astrology, I think, for most people.
Same.
Yeah, you and I kind of do the same thing. So spoiler alert for all of you out there. We
actually timed this according to astrology, our first taping. So.
We did. But I personally use a service. I'm going to do a little shout out here to Serious Joy.
Same.
Yeah. It's actually really helpful. So the reason why they built their program is for exactly how we're using it. That it gives us not only a daily idea, we get a pep talk every day to kind of tell us what the energy of the day is, but we get reminders throughout the day of what's going on, weekly, monthly, yearly,
We are mentored by Serious Joy. But I also, and I don't know if you do this, but I pass this information along to people I know who are going to be kind of on the thick of it and need to have it, don't have time to get it.
Yes.
And kind of depend on me to be their inside of like, okay, this is a Mars ruled day. And for those of you who don't know, Mars is the god of war. And so while it's not war necessarily, but just that action energy and my will trump your will, that kind of mood.
It can also be sexy time, passion.
It's true, because Mars and Venus, But the other thing is, I will send a note to my husband just saying, hey, so as you're mingling with the public, just be aware that people might be a bit tetchy or a bit boundary oriented.
Ready to step outside, if you will. Yeah, ready to start a fight because they're all riled up.
It's a good day to be careful driving, climbing ladders. And it's not that it is a danger necessarily. What I find for myself, because I have a lot of Mars in my chart, is that I am so quickly moving on to the next task, that I'm not finishing up the last 30 seconds of slicing the onion. And so my mind has already moved to cleaning the cutting board while I still have the knife in my hand. And so I am more inclined to accidentally cut myself, not because of Mars, but just because the energy is moving so fast.
Yeah. For me, I end up kind of using it to just as a reminder that as I'm dealing with people, not to be a part of, like, not to be reactionary to people's anger, frustrations, road rage, all of those kinds of things. Because I figure, not that it's not okay to be upset about things, totally for sure, but I think that if it's truly valid being upset with, you'll probably still be upset about it 24 hours from then, in which case, go ahead and deal with it at that time. But it helps me just, like, I go into the day being like, okay, people might be a little pissy, and I need to not, I need to just be the neutral party here and not make it worse, because me making it worse is really making it worse. It's not. It's not making it better. I'm not accomplishing anything. Chances are, at least, I'm not really going to be accomplishing anything. I'm just adding more complication to everything.
And I think that's part of the compassion that studying astrology lends us, is that, I can know all of this stuff and still feel it and be like, but I know, be careful, don't respond to emails, etc. And all of the people who are out there just suddenly angry and don't know why, to have a little bit of compassion for them, being like, for all they can perceive, they just got jumped on.
Oh yeah, 100%. And that's where you're saying that you use it to tell your friends or give them a heads up. I realize that not a lot of people are into this, so I have a tendency with the public to use it as for people that I interact with, friends and things, as they tell me about issues that are going on in their day. I kind of will see the correlation, and I will ask. I'm like, do you want to hear the woo-woo explanation of what's going on right now? And most of the time people are like, yes, 100%, tell me. And then I'll say, I'm like, well, astrologically, from this point, and I can also tell them a time frame, because sometimes it's really, really helpful to be able to see a light at the end of the tunnel, to know that this is not just going to go on indefinitely. And sometimes that can be really, really beneficial to help you move through the time, to be like, all right, I just need to take a breath and wait it out past, I don't know, a day or 2 days, however it's supposed to be, and be like, to use the popular term, this too shall pass. That can really give you a lot of comfort, is how I found in speaking with others. That's how I kind of present it.
And I think another thing is using the energy that's beneficial. So on a Taurus rule day that's all about manifestation energy, like, go ahead and finish that project. Do that little bit of extra push, and you will find yourself supported.
Yes.
On a Mercury day, like today,
Yay.
Go ahead and talk and think, because you have that kind of energy, intellectual energy, that is helping lift you a little bit further than you normally would. So all of these energies in the sky, which seem distant, are actually very present in our lives, in our bodies, in our chemistry. And this is just a way of using them. Like, if you had any other superpower, if you could fly or read minds or become transparent, wouldn't you want to use it? That's kind of how I feel about astrology. It's like, you've given me the operating system for myself. So
yeah, you've given me a map to look at, and I can kind of see what's coming up. I can time things accordingly, like starting a podcast. When am I going to be my most talkative self? When am I going to be able to communicate my best? When am I probably not going to also show up as my best self? Like, that's also important to know at times. So
yeah, the days where it's like, you know what, just, you feel like crying anyway,
just do it.
Yeah, just watch the movie that you know is going to make you cry, and just clear it out of your system. That is, those tears are healing. And so that's just where you need to be. That's how you're processing reality right now. And maybe don't schedule the big presentation on that same day.
If possible.
If possible. And I think the other thing is this shows us kind of how we can say, you know what, I do have to do that presentation and I do know it's a weepy day. So what am I going to do to support myself to not be weepy in front of, the CEO?
Yeah. Do I cry ahead of time? Do I wait to cry later? Or do I watch something that's going to be uplifting beforehand in order to know that I need an extra pep talk that day? Like that can be really, really important. Or even if sometimes life just happens, and sometimes it's great if you can plan around what is going to be happening in the world, but sometimes that's not really possible. And so just kind of having a heads up of what could be an issue that day and just be like, okay, all right, I'll keep an eye out. I'm not necessarily going to totally expect that this is going to happen, but know that it's a potential and just be prepared for that. And, depending on what the situation is, that's, I think, kind of the best heads up that you can possibly have. Like, knowing yourself is the best way for you to be able to surf the energy.
Yeah, it's going to rain today. But it's going to rain and it's also going to be hot. So are you just going to go out in a pair of, a bikini and a pair of hunter's boots?
That sounds like a great idea, honestly, because then my clothes are not getting wet. I mean, my other clothes, if that was okay for society, although I think I would probably get some looks. I don't know.
That's true. These are metaphorical bikinis, by the way. So on a daily practice, so we both do the listening to the astrology program. We both have what's called a astrological day timer that is cued to our specific birth date. So we know when planets are transiting, which is what happens when a planet today is hitting the same place that a planet was on the day of my birth. And so that's happening at the same time. That's actually in a different color. So that's helpful.
Yeah.
And shout out to Honeycomb. And those kinds of things that are just in part of the daily practice.
I think it's just honestly just a good idea to just see what's coming up. It's probably the best thing you can do.
Astrology helps you to be informed.
Okay, so we realize that we may have thrown a lot of information out at you, and you may want to start to look into some of these things on your own. So, Suzanne, what would you recommend for somebody who knows nothing, has never really dived into this before? What kinds of things would you recommend that they look at?
cafeastrology.com.
Yeah, agreed.
It is probably the most efficient and accurate natal chart, which is the chart that you have from the moment of your birth. So you need to know your time of birth and your location in order to get an accurate reading. But the analysis is just phenomenal. And I feel like you can get that and start reading that and just sort of processing through that. And the way that I approached it was, how much of this rings true for the life I've already lived?
Yes.
Before I'm going to give you any credence to the life I have, prove yourself by what has happened. And that is really how I came into astrology, of just going, oh, wow. You have my autobiography.
Yeah, there are also, obviously, if you already are aware of this, there's so many books that you can look at that are going to give you so much more information if you really want to dive in deep. For all of these kinds of topics that we're going to be talking about, you can go way down deep into the rabbit hole on them. However, if you have already done something like Cafe Astrology, where it's just a computer-generated report, the next level I would recommend is actually seeking an astrology reader out and getting a reading from somebody, because then you're also putting in not only what kind of standard is there, but somebody's actual interpretation.
And there are many people who've been doing this for 20 years plus.
Yeah.
So finding somebody who has that kind of experience, because they've been able to see the patterns that those sorts of shapes in your birth chart have created, and they can relate that.
That can be their experience and what they've seen and how things have kind of come out can be invaluable.
Absolutely. So the thing about astrology is that you can get astrology for anything. You can get a birth chart read for or created for your business and get an idea of where the pitfalls and the strengths are going to be. You can find out where you should live for the most beneficial love story, or profession or health.
You can get it for how you work with money, like abundance and that kind of thing in your life. You can get it for obviously love life. Everybody, I think that's what most people are going to probably be using it for. But you can also get it for health too, like what kind of health issues you may potentially have. There, you can use it for so many different things. It's mind-blowing how specific it can get. And different readers have different strengths for what it is that they offer as far as what they specialize in. So know that if you go and you get an astrology reading from a person, that everybody has their own strengths.
And horoscopes are, in case we have not
made this clear,
are not one size fits all. And then adjacent to astrology is human design and gene keys, which are different kinds of iterations. And that's actually how I found my way into astrology, is through those interpretations of astrology. So there are many different ways to approach this. But really,
honestly, with horoscopes and all of that, I think that, and also I just want to say that a horoscope is like a quick little blurb that you read versus a really detailed description of something. So that might be a definition thing to keep in mind. However, astrology overall, why you might want to use this, especially if you're somebody who's into self-development, with chances are if you're listening to this, you probably are into self-development. It can really help you with pointing out what your strengths are, what your potential weaknesses, pitfalls are, what your fears are, and how to help you work through and address those things head on without feeling judged.
And I think, kind of like any good hero's journey, understanding what the mountain ahead of you is really helpful to figure out, again, what kind of gear do you need.
Yeah.
But I think the thing that, for me, that I would say in closing is that astrology is so intimate. It is the hand of, all of time and space, God, universe, Jesus,
whatever
the
you
angels,
want to say. Yeah.
all of them being like, no, I thought of you. I thought of you. And your life is completely supported to be the you that you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And here are the pathways to get there. And I think one of the best thoughts I have heard is that if you dream about doing something, that's actually part of what you're supposed to do. Like, you wouldn't have that dream if it wasn't almost a deja vu from the future saying, hey, don't forget, you want to do a podcast.
Do it. Do it.
Do it now.
Speaking of podcasts, so for our next episode, make sure to tune in with us. The letter B is for, Suzanne?
Balance.
And breath. Our trigger words, believe it or not.
So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. We hope you join us.
Thank you for joining us today, and please share. We'll see you next time.